Welcome to 101. I'm Greg Bassey, your host from the Salisbury Independent newspaper. It's the biggest day we have of the year. Our mayor, the mayor of my hometown, Salisbury, Maryland, is in the house. Mayor Jake Day. Welcome, sir.
Great. Thank you so much for having me back.
So you're so busy, and I appreciate your time. We love having you on here because you actually know what's going on in town. So we get to ask you about that. But you just had your big State of the City address. Tell us what you told the world about the state of our city.
Well, we took a different approach. And this approach this time was one of reflection. And after 10 years now as an elected official in this city, I think reflection is something that I can and should do.
You owe yourself some reflection.
I think from time to time,
Yeah.
and that's the value of the State of the City. Yes, it's a charter mandated report to the council on the state of affairs in the city of Salisbury, but I think it's also very important that we take that time for ourselves to just look at our place in history. So what we decided to do was to say, we're but temporary stewards of this place, and for the brief time that we've got it, we better ask ourselves, are we doing everything we possibly can to move the needle on as many possible measures with respect to the quality of our city? And the question that we came up with was, what makes a better Salisbury? And then the second sort of step in that process was to say, well, every temporary steward of the city had to ask themselves the same question, or should have been asking themselves the same question. And so this moment in time, while we may feel it's special, it's just a blip on the radar. And so let's go back and find those other moments in time where there might have been a perspective on the future, and they would have asked themselves, what makes a better Salisbury? And then, let's reflect on that and say, what would they think? Did we move the needle? And so we asked that with respect to, or through the lens of, different topics or areas of interest for the city, whether it was downtown, whether it was jobs, whether it was housing stock, homelessness, public safety, transportation, you name it. So we asked ourselves, management, transparency, all of those things. So we asked ourselves through each of those lenses, what makes a better Salisbury? What have we done? And what are we doing? And so I shared with the community what I think they would have seen as a better Salisbury. And in some cases, it's a very sort of salient, easy to understand, easy to identify with image. For example, tower crane, 220 feet in the air, and a high-rise underneath of it in downtown Salisbury. That's something that they've all visioned for 70 years, but now it's coming to fruition.
It's a once-in-a-lifetime thing.
It is, and the first can only happen
At
once,
our
right?
lifetimes, yes.
That's
We've
right.
talked
We're
about
here,
that.
We're
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
We're here seeing it in real time. And the same, though, could be asked of jobs. And we took a different approach there. We took the approach of, let's look at the lens of a Campbell Soup worker. And so there was a quote in the Daily Times when Campbell Soup closed, and saying, the gentleman was saying, it's bad, real bad, but I'll find another job. And the hope in that statement was, we tried to, again, take an optimistic perspective of that time. Yes, it was a bad moment, and yes, I think it's one, when we think of jobs in the area, that's one that's unforgettable. Dresser Wayne closing, or Labanal closing, or Campbell Soup closing. But at the same time, it's a moment where that person saw opportunity in the future. Now, he might not have had a lot of hope, but he had some hope. And I think, just since 2015, we've added 7,000 jobs in the city. I think there's reasons to be hopeful. We still have 12% manufacturing employment. We've seen, on the public safety front, we used a quote from when Barb Duncan first arrived here. And, she arrived in 2010, looking at the 2009 crime numbers, the worst year that we had since the 80s. A very bad year, and after a long rise in crime, and the descent that happened after her arrival. But we looked at that moment, that vantage point of, we've got to do better than this. And it can't stop with just the crime numbers. It also has to be about engaging the youth to prevent future generations from making the same mistakes of those who followed a criminal path today. And so we started to talk about the community centers. And I think we used a quote from Theo Williams, who at the time was a representative on the Salisbury Youth Civics Council. And what Theo was saying was, with respect to a proposed curfew ordinance in 2015, was, this is not the answer. And this sends the wrong message to our youth. And if we're not going to be doing any of the proactive things and our only message is through a pair of handcuffs, then we've done no service to the young people in this community. And so each of the things that I shared took that same perspective and looked at where we are today versus where we were at that moment in time.
I'm glad you mentioned curfew because in Cambridge right now they're considering one. And I want to scream out, call Salisbury and ask them. They just went through that process, and this is why it went down.
You know, I, as the past president of the Maryland Municipal League, and a member of the executive committee, and someone who's led a city for 10 years, I try to balance very carefully sharing my opinion about what another community is doing,
right,
and trying to ensure that they don't make mistakes that I've made or that they learn from things we learn from. And I commented in one small corner of the internet, and
as you are known to do from time to time.
I said, yeah, that's right. I'm going to share my opinion. And I said, you know, the best thing that ever happened to my city was rejecting this notion. And someone copied that and shared it and was like, see, y'all are fools, look at this. And you know, that was not what I was trying to say. Because I think it's a tough moment because, you know, Cambridge is a place where population has been declining, crime has been rising, particularly violent crime. You know, they've had multiple homicides each year. In years that we've had 0 homicides, in years that we've had 1, Cambridge has, you know, many, many more. You know, very, very tough, economically distressed place with some incredible things happening and some really beautiful, wonderful, exciting things happening, and some really dynamic leadership too. But all of that is happening, and you can understand why they feel under the gun to do something.
Right.
And that so often drives decision making, particularly when somebody tosses out an answer. And then you got to figure out, how are we going to reject that answer without rejecting the premise that we want to do something and that we want to be engaged in doing the right thing. And so I hope my friends in Cambridge take the same approach we took. And you know, the truth is, they are already at the table in providing safe spaces for youth. They've got a youth community center, a Boys and Girls Club that has been funded by the state. They're engaged in the young people there. So I think they've got a leg up over where we were in 2015 to do the right thing. And I don't think a curfew is going to make a material difference for them. Certainly wasn't going to for us, particularly when the problem we were looking at was after school and weekends and summer. So I'm hopeful that they make the right decision, but we'll see.
This is why I can't be mayor, why I would be a terrible mayor, because I just look at infrastructure.
Yeah.
So just recently, you know, I'm walking around and I look at downtown, the West Main Street. I'm like, wow, all it took to get to where we are with this right now. And I went down to the Kindness Palooza thing. I'm like, you know, this 10 years ago, this amphitheater wasn't here, and it's really important to our town. The Riverwalk, and just all the other things, you know, the bike lanes, which you're assailed on all the time. You know, just all these great infrastructure things, and I think that's a measure of success. But you're thinking so far beyond that. You're thinking about the community centers and what's going on Truett Street and the East Church Street area and the tiny village, and whether the people are able to pay their rent and the housing situation. You're looking at things in such a different perspective that's so deep and beyond physical stuff in terms of what people are really experiencing.
I'm going to be a miserable shell of myself when I'm not doing this job anymore, because no job will ever compare to this.
Right. And
so you say you could never do that job. I think once you've seen this job, nothing else could ever replace this. So I don't know which one of us is right, but I think we're saying the same thing kind of, which is that you have to think about 360 degrees of a community. And that's not an easy thing to do, particularly when you don't control the levers of all 360 degrees. You know, you might control 180 degrees worth, and county government, state government, federal government, the community, the private sector, nonprofits, philanthropies, they hold the keys to the rest. And you got to use the power of influence. You got to create momentum, inertia, excitement. You got to do all those things that aren't the true power that comes with, executive government, but you have to use those tools. You have to employ them to make change. And yes, you have to influence the price of housing, which is a hard thing to influence in America, where the private market decides that, and I believe ought to. But we have fundamental problems such as an over demand and an undersupply. We have fundamental problems such as we haven't built housing at the rate we need to. And so I think we have to stay engaged in all those deeper issues at the same time as taking care of the things that are explicitly ours, such as infrastructure. And I want to share something with you. And you can run this quote front page if you need to. I don't care about bike lanes. I don't care one bit. I could care less. I have used a few of them when Matt Drew has made me.
I love them.
Well, that's great, but I don't care. What I care about is I don't want to sit across from a mom and dad whose son got run over by an SUV, and they say, hey, we've done our homework, and the facts were there that the answer to protecting human life was in engineering the streets in a safer way. And the engineers all knew what to do. And it went all the way up the chain, and everybody knew what to do. And then the politicians were scared of people saying, I don't like it.
There's grant money available to pay for it.
Exactly, which makes it really easy. But you knew the right thing to do, and you didn't, and my child got run over or hit or hurt or killed. I don't ever want to be in that position. So we're going to do the right thing. And I could care less if it's popular, and I could care less if people think it ought to be done differently. That doesn't matter to me, not one bit, when I know it could save a Salisburyan's life. That, at the end of the day, is the right thing to do. I also think it's really important to remember that I'm not the smartest guy in the room. And when the smartest people in the room say, Mayor, this is the right answer, this is the way to do it, and of course I push back on certain things, and I'm going to say, well, wait a minute. People are going to have a hard time adjusting to this or that, or not understand this or that, and then we try to come to a solution that both achieves something safe, something usable, something meaningful, whatever the objective is, and something that will make people comfortable. Those are important things. Then that's the answer. And it's not about what Jake wants. It's not about what my successor or predecessor want. It's about, the right answer.
But there's also an education thing. So like people
Yes.
say, they've made it impossible for me to cut through the park now because it's too slow. There are circles by the zoo. You're not supposed to cut through the park. You're supposed to be out there on Main Street,
or
Route 50.
Or
That's
Route
what
50.
it's for. Well, I can't go down Waverly anymore when there's traffic on 13. Too bad. That's a neighborhood street. It's not a thoroughfare. You're supposed to be out on 13 if you're going to the mall.
You're right.
That's not what it's. Well, College Avenue. How do I get from Camden to? You're not supposed to be over there either.
And slow down.
And slow down.
And if it decreases volume somewhat on these streets, that's okay.
Right.
But we had so many over-engineered streets, engineered that they were engineered such that they gave such freedom for you to ignore your surroundings and speed that you put people's lives at risk. And at the end of the day, I think we have a public safety obligation before all else to try to do things in such a way that they will preserve and protect life.
Yeah, and Carroll Street, you've mentioned this to me, Carroll Street and 50, they're like moats that keep people from the neighborhoods into going into downtown. We're going to fix that now with Carroll Street. I don't know if you can ever fix it with Route 50, but you do feel like you're taking your life in your hands to cross Carroll Street, but it's not going to be that way anymore.
Well, Carroll Street was the most egregious because we did it to ourselves.
Right.
Route 50 and Route 13, those were federal programs that have wreaked havoc on every city in America. Every city in America is trying to figure out how to fix that now, how to repair that now. Yeah, it has even reached the point where it's a talking point in gubernatorial stump speeches. I heard Governor-elect Moore, say, we're going to stitch back our communities where highways tore through them. This is true in every part of America, and we all know it. And yeah, it's going to be difficult, although I would point you to our downtown master plan that shows a new block of buildings being built in the middle of what is now Route 50, and Route 50 being narrowed to 2 lanes in each direction through that section, in that one little piece where it's 3 plus Broad Street and Church Street.
Right.
It's 200 feet across. It's a massive wasted void of asphalt instead of a logical street pattern. But on Carroll Street, we chose to do that to ourselves. And now, was it in vogue And did it bring a sense of pride that we are a bigger city or coming into our own by building these big, wide 5-lane roads? Yeah, it was absolutely the hubris of engineers at the time, and it's true with Robert Moses in New York City as it is in Salisbury, Maryland. However, once we've learned, hey, we could have the 3,400 employees at Tidal Health not feel like they were divided permanently without taking their lives, in their hands from the downtown, from their downtown, from the center of commerce on this peninsula, from a place that now has some restaurant options for them, and shopping options, and nightlife options, and event options. Yeah, we should fix that. We should fix that. Not to mention all the other, citizens who live south of Carroll Street.
And working at the Daily Times all those years, walking over to the junior board for lunch, you take your life into your hand crossing Carroll Street. And my only comfort was that when I get hit, I'm at the hospital already. That they can save me when I get hit, because people couldn't drive fast enough on that road to satisfy themselves.
Oh no, faster and faster and faster. I mean, if we were ever to attract like an Indy Series race, Carroll Street would be that would be our featured spot. That's where they'd put all the cameras, and you'd see the little cars whipping around. I'm glad to know that I'm not the only one who has an affinity for the junior board.
Love the junior board.
Great Scrabble.
Yeah, great everything.
Great everything.
Great everything.
Absolutely.
I'm on a tangent. I apologize.
That's all right.
So we just had an election. I've got to ask this question. We have going to have a new county executive, Julie Giordano. I have no idea what your opinion is of her. You're going to have to work with her. What are you thinking?
We spent 2 hours together this morning. That is our second long meeting, but we've interacted many times. I got to say, I'm excited. I did as best I could to stay out of local races. I had some people I care very much about running for office, friends of mine, people I supported, people I endorsed. But others, I did my very best just to stay out of it, because I'm going to need to work with whoever, and I will work with whoever the voters choose, of course. Even if I've endorsed somebody, I'm going to work with whoever the voters choose. But in that race in particular, there is such a history of tension between the city as represented by the mayor and the county as represented by the executive. And there was tension before that.
And it's ridiculous, but go ahead, sorry.
It's ridiculous.
I'm sorry.
And there is no way that you can meet with Executive-elect Giordano and believe that in her heart she holds any malice toward the citizens of Salisbury. Impossible. So I have a lot of confidence that, like me, she is a person who is ready to get about the work of the government which she will run, work hard and fast to produce results. She will have a sense of urgency, which, as she and I talked about this morning, and I don't want to reveal everything we discussed, but one of the things we talked about was just that executive responsibility to maintain the sense of urgency. That she feels that as a responsibility, and I feel that as a responsibility. And at the end of the day, we're the only ones who are going to be able to imbue that into our troops, into our unit, our organization, and we've got to do it from the top. So I feel a lot of hope. I think we are used to saying flippantly, we come from different political stock, or we're at opposite ends of the spectrum. I'm not sure what we're opposite ends of. I could care less what her politics are as far as national politics, things like that. There are things we obviously, you could identify that she has spoken to, that she believes that I've spoken to, that I believe you could say, hey, those two are night and day. Those two are black and white. And that's okay. But what I am certain of is that the things that we need to work together on, we're going to not have a difficult time working together on. So I really hope that in 5 or 10 years, the quip that, I know Salisbury and county, city and county governments don't get along, will be a thing of the past. It won't even be a mentionable at some point because we'll have proven that we got too much common ground and too much common interest to disagree over things.
Okay, cynical reporter guy.
Please.
So you all are at Greater Salisbury Committee recently, and we have a lot of things we want to get done, sewer and water.
Yeah.
Right. She wants to get sewer and water done. You want to get sewer and water done. So here's what I think could happen.
Okay.
Yes, we're going to get sewer and water done, but we're going to use your plant, and you're not going to be able to annex, and we don't care what the state rules are, and we're not going to spend any money on this. You're going to have to take care of all of it. We all agree it needs to be done, but how we're going to get it done is where the politics are going to intersect.
Well, I don't agree with that at all because
Help me understand
No
that.
one has proposed that. It is not possible. No one's suggesting that. The county has now adopted a plan, and that you know what that plan says.
No, they haven't adopted it. They keep telling me they've only accepted it. So they acknowledged receiving their mail. They signed for it, but that was all they've done.
Tomato, tomato. Well, if they don't,
Yeah.
they'll never do anything.
Understand.
So if they do anything, what their plan says is within the municipal growth areas, it's up to the cities. Now, who's going to pay for the infrastructure? The counties, but that's not going to be county taxpayer money. That's going to be state SRF money. That's going to be federal dollars. That's not going to be county taxpayer money. It can't be. The scale of it is too huge. We started doing a study of just a couple of the pocket areas around the city. I mean, you're talking about billions. You quickly get into the billions.
Right, but there's some
Just in
places that just don't make sense in terms of putting sewer there. Like, not that this has anything to do with the city, but like a place like Whitehaven, do you pay like $1 billion for, not $1 billion, but $20 million for Whitehaven to have a sewer plant, or do you just let Whitehaven just kind of disappear?
Well, but looking at their plan, it doesn't suggest that you should build a full-scale wastewater treatment plant. It suggests that you should treat their sewage, and there are different ways to do that. And I think a small treatment plant, a package plant, which is a term of art that not everybody likes because it makes it sound like it's neat and easy.
Right.
It's not. But certainly the Amanda Pollocks of the world would say that's not the best term to describe it. But I think there are the rural villages approach, right? That we are going to retain these places. They are going to exist, and we shouldn't deliberately cut them off from a future by saying we're not going to provide service from a sewer or septic standpoint. So I think they come up with a scattering package treatment plant, small plant approach to that. And then in area, and the same in areas like, the Nanticoke Road, that corridor, which is outside of the Salisbury growth area. Yes, it's a bunch of Salisbury growth from when we sprawled, but it's outside of our growth area. It's not where we intend to grow. Let it exist on some system.
You as a city, you don't have any
Yeah.
hopes to annex that or anything like that.
No, it's not in our growth area.
Yeah.
So and that's not. I wasn't even on the planning commission. It was before I was on the planning commission that we adopted that comprehensive plan, and it suggests a path forward that I've adopted in my head and heart because the people before me did. The county adopted a comprehensive plan that agrees with it entirely. They match. There is no disagreement between the city of Salisbury and Wicomico County governments on where Salisbury should grow and where Salisbury should be. Look at our plans. We both agree on exactly to the inch. And so I'd say, keep our plans, continue down that road. We should take a center-out approach, as best as possible, and orderly growth is a good thing. For no other reason, it saves taxpayer money because you efficiently used infrastructure dollars instead of inefficiently using them. But I think long-term, you've got to look at, since we agree, and since we know the city can and will provide service in this area, and since there will not be another discharge permit for a new wastewater treatment plant in the Salisbury Metro Core authorized, we've got one answer. And by the way, it's got tons of capacity. And by the way, the state put $70 million into it. There is no other answer.
So before they give them money for something else, they're going to want to use the $70 million that they
You better believe
already
it. And
invested.
there's only one way to use it, and that's through annexation.
Right.
And so
But as one of the council members said, we can't be held to some law that the city applied to benefit itself.
And guess what? They will be. As you and I have discussed
Some
with that
law.
council member, it is the law. And court after court after court has upheld
Right.
that you will be subject to that. And sorry, Wicomico County councilman, that's the way it's going to be. And there is no two ways about it. That being said, what we have to do is say, okay, well then what must we give up? And I think it's money. Because at the end of the day, you can't look at somebody who lives on Atlantic Avenue and say, hey, guess what? You're going to get a tax bill that's twice the tax bill you got yesterday. You're going to get a water bill that you've never had before. And until you annex, you're actually going to pay double that water bill. So we have to say, okay, we want to save them the cost of having to pump their septic out monthly. We want to save them the cost of having to replace the septic tank. We're able to get state money, maybe a little bit of county money, and then the city's obviously got to pay to maintain this thing in perpetuity, based on user fees, of course. But we've maybe a little federal money. We're going to run pipes to you, not at the cost of the property owners, but we're going to run the pipes to you and we're going to connect. Maybe there's a minimal cost to actually connect, like at the property. But then you can't say to them, congratulations, you have all these new costs on you. The city's got to give something up. I think it's the tax dollars and the water and sewer fees. You got to say, once you're connected, even if you're not annexed yet, even if it's just through pre-annexation or something like that, you're just going to pay in-city rates. Taxes, we'll phase that in, or we'll give those up for some period of years, something like that. I don't know what the answer is precisely, but I know we have to be at the table and be flexible. And since we cannot be flexible with our charter and our code, since we're going to require annexation, as we always should have done, and we should never flex on that. We have to flex on the thing that actually means something to people's pockets.
The other pending crisis is with first responders and fire, ambulance. County needs a plan. Salisbury's got a great fire department. You guys have the mutual service agreement now. I guess it's probably up for negotiation again.
It is.
So there's things to be rectified on that. Are you going to be a leader on that one?
Well, I think we were a leader last time since we waited, what was it? We let it expire and go past 7 years before we renewed it. And it took negotiation getting it. And we ended up with a compromise. And the nature of a compromise is that not everybody's happy. In fact, I think a lot of us walked away a little angry about that. But for the citizens, we left them with the assurance that an agreement provides, which is, yes, you will have service. You may not be a tax-paying resident of the city of Salisbury, but you will have service from the stations that make the most sense from a geographic distribution standpoint, which is the right thing to do because we're talking about public safety. We could certainly say, well, let Hebron have this, and let Parsonsburg have that, and let Delmar have this, and let Fruitland have that, and we could all go home and be happy, and the city of Salisbury could provide services only to its citizens. But that is not fair to those residents of the Salisbury Fire District who live outside of the city, who will get faster responses from the 3 Salisbury stations.
And you even, there was some of your own volunteers tried to leave and start their own fire system.
Once in the 1990s, once in 2004, and again in 2016.
Right, but the one that you had to oversee.
Same families,
right?
By the way. Same people.
But my point is, you stood up and said no. They're not qualified to do what needs to be done, and it was a difficult position for you to take because you could have said, it's none of my business, but you wanted the right thing for the people who live on the fringe of Salisbury.
Well, what we weren't going to do was be held hostage by people who were unwilling to respond to 911 calls and suggest that there was some better way of providing a service when we all knew what it came down to. It came down to power. And this is a long fought out battle that started before I was born with these same individuals and their generations within the same families. It's like I shared with County Executive-elect Giordano. It's kind of like the Hatfields and McCoys. And I found myself in the middle of it, weeks after taking office or months after taking office. And it was not a crisis I chose, but we don't get to choose our crises, generally speaking. So it was one we had to respond to. And my response was just one of common sense. Before it even led to a public breakaway, it was, I'm willing to give up anything you want, any power, but you got to start responding to 911 calls. That's the oath you took. You said you were going to do this. You said when there was a choking baby or a man having a heart attack or a person caught in a house fire, you were going to show up. You swore to do that. And if that's the one thing that we can hold ourselves to, that you upheld your right hand and you said you were going to do that you do it. And when you're unwilling, well, my friend, we are not going to negotiate about money or power.
Right.
First do your job.
Right.
And then we'll talk about the other stuff. So I think that we are not in that kind of crisis countywide. I think we have a system that is sort of a traditional system, but what each of the agencies around Wycomico County have found is that they need some in-station staffing, some full-time staffing, and that changes based on scale. For us, we need full crews, now 4 ambulance crews. We need engines, we need ladder trucks, we need staffed crews around the city. In Sharptown or the West Side or Allen or Powellville, that may be different, and I don't pretend to know what each of them needs. They know what they need, but they are staffing some in-station staffing in many of these departments or agencies. And so I think countywide, we certainly need some sort of acknowledgement that we'd be better off having some level of unity and coordination. And I'm not proposing that I should be in charge of that or do that at all. Quite the opposite. Tell us what the system is, and we'll play by the rules. We'll be a part of the system. The caveat to that is there is a major problem created by this dynamic of these small entities creating 1 or 2 or 3 positions here and there, is that they're all in competition for talent. And where's most of that talent already exist?
You.
City of Salisbury.
Yeah, they're coming from you.
So we're all fighting over talent. And so now you're seeing them in a wage battle. And so we're in a wage battle. And, when I came in, the fire department's budget was $6.6 million. It was 11.1 this year. That's a 70% increase in 10 budgets. And that's a big increase. Almost all of that is personnel costs. And still, I will tell you that any conversation with my firefighters is going to include that we are not paid adequately to stay here. Compared to, we could be in Ocean City, we could be in Anne Arundel, we could be in Prince George's County, we could be in wherever. And so, you look at the budget, and I look at myself in the mirror and say, what am I going to do? What are we going to do? I got to hold on to these people. And so it's a constant battle. And so things that we could do. Now you're always in a battle for talent, and there is a national, across all industries, shortage of labor. But when I say talent, I mean it, because we're talking about people that not only have the many certifications required, have already done that sunk cost. They've got, they're a paramedic or they're an EMT, but on top of that, they've got the experience of being a Salisbury firefighter.
It's a unique skill.
Yeah, the busiest agency in the air. It's the same reason why our police officers get poached. They might, have the certifications and be an officer and have the years, but they also have the years doing the job in Salisbury. All that experience. It's the best you can get. So they come after our people. And I fiercely want to keep our people. So I view it as a pressing problem for the next executive and council to figure out, for County Executive-elect Giordano and for the council to figure out. And she absolutely knows that, and she's already working on it. So what will the answer be? I couldn't tell you. I don't know. But I do know that I'm going to want to figure out our relationship in terms of the Salisbury Fire Service Agreement. I'm also going to want to be a part of figuring out the whole county fire service question.
I just saw in my favorite newspaper, the Salisbury Independent, that
That's a good paper.
Thank you, that you were on Capitol Hill testifying for the U.S. Senate. What was that all about? Are you getting too big for your britches there?
No, I think if you ever get comfortable being called before the United States Senate, then you should quit your job if you're in public office.
Especially unless you're under indictment.
You got to be. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Especially if you're under. No, you ought to be nervous, and you ought to want to do a good job. So I was asked by Chairman Cardin, who's the chair of the Senate Subcommittee on Transportation and Infrastructure, subcommittee of EPW, which Senator Carper chairs out of Delaware.
And the photo was you with Senator Carper and Senator Cardin.
That's right. That's right. There was a photo of that. Was that the photo you ran?
Yeah, that's what I'm wearing.
Okay. Or the photo that paper ran.
The Salisbury Independent ran.
That's right.
Available on newsstands every Thursday.
That's right. So the subject was the 1-year anniversary of the bipartisan infrastructure law, and the panel of 4 witnesses that were called were myself, the deputy of transportation for the city of Philadelphia, a county commission president in Wyoming, and an engineer, a county engineer in North Dakota, from a county in North Dakota. their senators for Wyoming and North Dakota are senators who sit on this subcommittee. So the discussion was about the impacts, and my points and points that all other three witnesses agreed with, although maybe not the main reason that they were asked to be there, but were one, that direct appropriation was the most important change, and that two, increased appropriation was the second most important change. Now, you can't just go to Congress and say, thanks for the money, give me more money.
Right.
You got to have something else. So direct appropriation was the most important. So the big change in the bipartisan infrastructure law was that state DOTs, which are normally the pass-through for infrastructure spending, were bypassed for a portion of those dollars to come directly to
Right.
counties and municipalities. And my point was, trust us. There is not a state official that shows up for downtown master planning sessions endlessly for 2 years and sits in the room and understands what people want in their community. But there are municipal and county officials who do that.
Right.
And so when I know what my community needs and what my community wants, trust us.
I made the case to my lawmaker for the money. You all are giving me the money, but some guy in the state is going to hold it and then decide how to give it to me.
And guaranteed, without question, they will use it in a different way.
Right.
They will. They will want to use it for maximizing throughput, which means expanding highways or extending highways or finding other ways of maximizing throughput. Well, that's not the value that we hold as primary. We hold safety as a value. We hold aesthetic as a value. We hold circulation, yes, as a value, but we don't seek to maximize throughput in all that we do. Safety is number one, which is why we adopted Vision Zero, or the City Council adopted Vision Zero. Safety is number one. Safety is not number one for state DOTs. And if they tell you that, I can prove to you through the decisions that they make that that's not true.
You've got the town square. I'm looking forward to that in terms of
Unity Square?
infrastructure.
Yeah.
The tiny villages, the tiny homes will be coming online here real soon. What else should I be looking for?
Well, you will see a groundbreaking, although ground has been broken, on the expansion of the Truett Street Community Center. We're doubling that in size. You will see a opening of the Ann Street Village once we get the electrical transformer that we need for that, or we have Delmarva Power has the transformer.
Tremendous shortage of these supplies.
It's
Yeah.
a real challenge, but we need the 800 amp panel, and we need the breaker switch,
Right.
and then the housing for the breaker switch. There's three things we need. So if you know of anyone who's got those things, please give me a call, 443-235-6233. In addition to that, we're also going to be attending a topping out ceremony at the Ross on the 28th, I believe. So that's going to be great. We've got a ribbon cutting on the Zoo Administration Building forthcoming.
And I left that out too, because so much of your job is just to maintain the things that we have that make us special that we don't even think about, like the park and the zoo.
Yeah.
You got to make sure that place is organized and cleaned up and environmental, and it's just administering that is enough work for anyone.
I mean, I don't know how excited anybody else got when we replaced the plastic trash cans throughout the park with the city standard park trash can. I don't know how excited other people got when we put the new city standard bench through. I don't know. Maybe they'll get excited when we do the streetlights through the park, which is the next project.
Right.
That was funded last year and is in design now. But I think those things are really important. At the signs in the park, the wayfinding, the Vision Zero infrastructure around the park. I mean, I think all that stuff's really important.
Well, I mean, our bridge was closed for 5 years because there was no money to fix it. The bandstand nearly fell down because
That's right.
there was no money to fix it.
That's right. Well,
Basic things like that you keep going.
And we're getting ready we'll be bidding out work on the bridge pretty soon. Because when you build an old wooden bridge, you got to repair it like every couple of years.
Yeah, you have it closed temporarily, the North Division Street Bridge.
So we will be
I'm
closing
waiting for the calls on
South
that.
Division Street
Yeah.
Bridge. We will be closing the South Division Street Bridge. They have to replace all of the seals. So in order to do that safely, the workers have to close the bridge.
Right.
The contractor said, we can't do this work with cars going over it. And so, that's the nature of the beast.
You were on a roll, too, about things that are coming up, and I cut you off, sorry.
I give you a bunch. trying to remember if there are others. There will be, no doubt. Certainly, Unity Square is a big deal. We're really excited about that. And I think many of the other real estate development projects that have been in the works for many years are now rolling forward. Had a great discussion this morning about Lot 1 project that is racing forward. You'll see more activity on that site in the coming months.
Lot 1's the big lot
That's
downtown
the big library
that we all
lot.
used to park
That's
in.
right. That's right.
And third Friday this week with the tree lighting again, I had tears.
It was a great. It was a great
But
time.
it was
It
1,000 people. It was
huge crowd.
unbelievable.
It was a huge crowd.
Oh, and cold, and people were really
cold.
into it.
Yeah,
And you were there with Santa. Did you put in a good word for me?
I did. I whispered in his ear.
Okay.
You know.
He's our mayor. He's Jake Day. I could talk to him all day, and I apologize for talking to him for so long, but we're thrilled he had time to be with us here today. Thank you, Jake.
Happy Thanksgiving.
I'm Greg Bassett from the Salisbury Independent newspaper. Another edition of 101 right here on PAC 14.
First Shore Federal is proud to support PAC 14 and one-on-one. We'd encourage every business to support PAC 14 and pick a program and support it, and let's make a difference.